now, we could all use some good news, and it came in the form of dexamethasone vaccine. This cheap steroid could significantly reduce deaths in critically ill COVID-19 patients by 1/3 for those on ventilators and by 1/5 for those on oxygen alone. The drug appears to stop the damage from the severe immune reaction called a cytokine storm that researchers increasingly believe is responsible for causing some patients to have multiple organ failure and ultimately die. A police officer who fatally shot a fleeing African-American man in the back last week in Atlanta, Georgia, will be charged with murder and assault. Garrett Rolfe, who has already been fired, faces 11 charges related to Rayshard Brooks' death. If convicted, he could face the death penalty. The other officer who was at the scene, David Branson, plans to testify as a witness in the case. France accused Turkey's navy of acting in a hostile and aggressive manner towards its NATO allies to prevent them from enforcing a United Nations arms embargo on Libya. In a strongly worded statement, France's Foreign Ministry spokesperson Agnes von der Maal said violations of the embargo, notably by Turkey, were the main obstacles to achieving peace and stability in Libya. She said Turkey's support for a government national accord offensive goes against all efforts to achieve a ceasefire in Libya. 3 Allied diplomats and a French defense official said Turkey continues to block a NATO defense plan for Poland and Baltic states, despite a deal last year between Turkey's president and Allied leaders. Diplomats said while Ankara has approved the plan, known as Eagle Defender, it has not allowed NATO military chiefs to put it into action. The Turkish government did not immediately respond for a request for comment. Egypt's parliament approved amendments to the country's electoral law. Lawmakers who introduced the changes said they would help achieve constitutional commitments to allocate 25% of seats to women and assure representation for other groups including workers, farmers, young people, Coptic Christians, people with disabilities, and Egyptians living abroad. Parliament also approved a law for electing a second chamber or Senate established through constitutional amendments last year. The United Arab Emirates said that Turkish and Iranian military interventions in Iraq violated the sovereignty of a sisterly Arab country. UAE denounced the Turkish and Iranian military interventions in brotherly Iraq through their bombing of areas in northern Iraq, which constituted a violation of the sovereignty of a sisterly Arab country and led to intimidation and the spread of terror among innocent civilians. It underlined the UAE's firm rejection of all forms of meddling in the affairs of Arab countries and its keenness to respect the sovereignty of Iraq and seize all acts that may threaten the peace and security of the region. The uncle of Syrian President Regime was found guilty of acquiring millions of euros worth of French property using funds diverted from the Syrian state and sentenced to 4 years in prison. He was convicted of embezzling Syrian state funds to buy homes and offices worth 90 million euros to build a French property portfolio. The French court also ruled that all of his property in France will be seized, as well as property worth 29 million euros in London. Tunisia's economy could shrink by up to 7% this year because of the effect of the COVID-19 pandemic. The government ended all restrictions on movement and businesses this month and will open its sea, land and air borders on June 27. However, the pandemic is hammering the tourism sector, which contributes nearly 10% of gross domestic product and is a key source of foreign currency. Investment Minister Salim Azabi said the number of unemployed people in Tunisia will increase by 275,000, according to a government study in partnership with the United Nations. Iran joined Turkey in carrying out airstrikes against Iraqi territories in the northern Kurdistan region. Turkish fighter jets struck last week, Kurdistan Workers' Party positions in northern Iraq, destroying their hideouts. Tehran had justified its attacks against Kurdish regions in Iraq, saying it is targeting the Iranian Kurdish opposition that operates within Iraqi territories. The Lebanese presidency kicked off preparations for holding a comprehensive national meeting scheduled for June 25th to discuss political, economic and financial issues, as officials carried out numerous meetings to contain mounting tensions. Presidential sources said that the meeting will be held at the presidential palace in Bada at the proposal of President Michel Aoun, following talks with Prime Minister Hassan Diab and Speaker Nabi Berri on the latest developments in the country. In a joint statement, the pair affirmed that preserving civil peace is the top priority, highlighting the need to intensify efforts to thwart any attempt to sow sedition. Turkish and Russian troops carried out their longest joint patrol along the key M4 highway in Syria's northwestern province of Idlib since the two sides signed a protocol last March, using parties to cease all military actions along the line of contact in the Idlib de-escalation area. The patrol has toured an area of more than 40 kilometers along the M4 highway for the first time since the start of joint patrols between the two sides. Meanwhile, the Syrian Observatory for Human Rights said a Russian jet executed 2 raids targeting the vicinity of El Moazra village in southern Idlib. No casualties have been reported. Amazon has launched in the kingdom as more Saudi shoppers turn to the web for purchases in the wake of the coronavirus. It comes as online shopping worldwide gets a boost from pandemic-related lockdowns and more shoppers are forced to turn to the web for their purchases. Customers can now shop on Amazon in Saudi Arabia using their Souk credentials, and free next delivery will be available for orders above 200 Saudi riyals. Saudi Arabia's cabinet called on the international community to prevent Israel from its aggressive behavior, which threatened regional stability. The cabinet reaffirmed kingdom's rejection of Israeli plans to annex Palestinian territories and called for a unified Islamic position against the blatant violation of international resolutions. The cabinet also condemned the Houthi militias for firing ballistic missiles and using drones to target civilians in the kingdom. An Egyptian hospital meant for the quarantine of coronavirus patients is introducing a psychological support initiative as part of its treatment protocol. The initiative is being launched under the supervision of the Egyptian Ministry of Health and is being applied as some coronavirus patients are suffering from depression. The doctor called on the Ministry of Health to provide audio and visual media material to communicate with patients in quarantine hospitals as a way to facilitate the task of psychiatrists and to also maintain privacy during treatment. The German NGO Sea-Watch rescued around 100 migrants off of Libya on Wednesday, saying the Libyan Coast Guard would have turned them back to shore if the humanitarian group had not intervened. The Dinghy was found 29 nautical miles off Zawiya, 40 kilometers west of Tripoli, adding that several of the migrants, who included women and children, were given immediate medical attention. The German and Italian rescue ships were allowed to resume operations in the central Mediterranean at the beginning of June after the Italian authorities held them at port for 2 months, citing technical reasons.